It was an ordinary day, and I was staying at a hotel not far from a local nature reserve. I decided to go hiking, just like I always do when I'm in a new place. You see, I'm not the kind of guy who relies too much on modern technology, so I had a printed map with me. The internet said the trail would take about 10 hours and lead to a beautiful lake view and a campsite. As I set out on the trail, things seemed pretty normal. But it was strangely quiet, not even the sounds of animals. Still, I pressed on. After walking for a few miles, I noticed another trail crossing the one I was following. It wasn't on my printed map, which was a bit concerning. But I figured it might be a new trail, so I decided to give it a try. A few more miles in, I realized that this new trail was leading me deeper into the dense part of the forest. I couldn't deny that it was getting a little unnerving, but I tried not to dwell on it too much and continued walking. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. I decided it was time to turn back and set up camp. As I turned to retrace my steps, something caught my eye. There was another new trail, just a little distance away from the one I had been on. It crossed into a third trail. I was sure I hadn't noticed it when I first came this way. It was almost hidden on the other side of the woods. My heart raced with fear. How had these trails appeared out of nowhere? I picked up the pace, all sorts of dark thoughts racing through my mind. With the sun going down, I took out my flashlight, desperately hoping to find my way back to the starting point. But the familiar trailhead didn't appear. Instead, I found myself in a different part of the forest, and I'd covered even more ground than when I first set out. The trailhead sign was nowhere in sight. Panic welled up inside me. I had no choice but to find a suitable spot to set up camp for the night. I was all alone in this unfamiliar forest, with no sign of civilization. The dark, rustling woods and silence made my skin crawl. My biggest concern was those mysterious trails that were nowhere to be found on my map. My phone had no signal, so I couldn't call for help. I spent a terrifying night alone in the wilderness, my imagination running wild with fear. Morning couldn't come soon enough. I packed up my camp and forced myself to continue my journey. That's when I saw it, a figure behind a tree in the distance. Someone was watching me, keeping a constant eye on my every move. I caught a glimpse of the person for a few seconds before they disappeared behind the tree. My heart raced, and I felt even more vulnerable. I continued walking, not daring to look back, hoping to put some distance between me and the mysterious guy. Another day passed, filled with paranoia and fear. Setting up camp at night was even harder. My mind was filled with the worst possible scenarios. Every rustle of leaves and snapping twigs sent shivers. After settling down for the night, I heard the sound of a vehicle passing by in the distance. My heart leaped with hope, and I unzipped my tent to rush towards the noise. As I emerged from the woods, a car stopped. I hurriedly explained my situation to the driver and asked for a lift. The driver agreed to wait while I packed up my belongings, but as I rushed back into the woods to retrieve my stuff, I saw a chilling sight. There were 4 men, tall and imposing, packing my belongings. Fear took hold of me, and I knew I had to get out of there, fast. Without a second thought, I left my camp and belongings behind, sprinting towards the waiting car. I was terrified, but I felt relief as I got into the car. I couldn't help but think that those fake trails I'd encountered were a trap, a ploy to lure unsuspecting hikers and steal their belongings. I thanked my lucky stars that I had managed to escape from those unknown individuals and made it out of the woods. The entire experience left me shaken and haunted. It was the winter season and I was driving back home after a job interview in another state. The road was foggy and visibility was low. There wasn't much traffic on the highway. I had been driving for about 12 hours, but with the fog, it could take up to 14 hours. Since visibility was low, I had to rely on Apple Maps to get me to my destination. The app was taking me on a different route, a shorter one, because the regular route was blocked due to snow. As I was driving along this new route, the map instructed me to take a turn in 30 miles. About 10 miles later, I entered a forested area. The Apple Maps app stopped working and froze on the screen, still showing a turn in 30 miles. I was a little concerned, but I thought the turn might be just ahead, so I took it. The turn led me to a narrower road that was covered in heavy snow. I started to feel uneasy. What if I had taken the wrong turn? Would this road lead me to my destination? I tried closing and reopening the Apple Maps app, hoping it would start working again, but it didn't. It was still frozen on the same screen, showing a turn in 30 miles. I kept driving, and soon I saw another road that led away from the densely forested area. I thought that once I got out of the forest, my phone would start receiving signals again and the map would start working again. I kept driving, and eventually the forest was behind me. I checked my phone again, but it was still the same. I wasn't getting any signals, and the map was still showing a turn in 30 miles. I started to feel uneasy. I thought about stopping and calling for help, but my phone wasn't getting any signals. I had no choice but to keep driving. I pulled over to the side of the road to think for a moment. What should I do next? Suddenly, a pickup truck pulled up behind me. I was relieved, hoping that the driver could help me. I got out of my car and waved the pickup truck down. The driver was in a hurry. He was driving fast and almost ran me over. He pulled over a short distance away and then got back in his truck and drove back to me. He rolled down his window and asked me what was wrong. I explained that I was lost and that my phone wasn't getting any signals. The driver told me that he didn't know the area either. He was just passing through. I noticed that there was something wrapped in plastic in the back seat of his truck. It was about the size of a human body. When I noticed the plastic-wrapped object, the driver's tone changed. He got angry and drove away without saying another word. I was terrified. What was that guy up to? Why was he driving around with a human-sized object in the back of his truck? I started driving again, afraid that the guy might come back. I drove for a few more miles until I saw a police car. I pulled over and asked the officers for directions. The officers told me that I was on the wrong road and that I had left the right route about 50 miles back. I was relieved to finally have a sense of direction, but I was also shaken by the experience. I realized that I shouldn't trust Apple Maps all the time. From that day on, I always have a backup plan in case my phone gets lost or the map doesn't work. I also make sure to let someone know where I am going and when I expect to be back.